Hey everyone, it's Matt, and today I will be reading to you another SCP entry. This one is a particularly long one, maybe the longest I've ever read on my channel, so I hope you'll enjoy it. Here we go. Item number SCP-6080. Object Class Euclid X Sequi. Special Containment Procedures. In order to ensure that SCP-6080 retains a passive state, it is kept inside a specialized containment chamber resembling a child's bedroom within Site-433. The room is equipped with a security camera to monitor SCP-6080 for any changes in behavior. Instances of SCP-6080-1 are located in Site-433's anomalous media storage room and are only to be viewed by D-Class during testing circumstances. In the event of unauthorized viewing of an SCP-6080-1 instance, the subject who viewed the footage will be evacuated and contained in a standard humanoid cell until the Rerun event ceases. Personnel are required to fill out a form before being allowed access to the containment chamber during a Rerun event. Description: SCP-6090 is a large, worn cardboard box. Eric's cartoon box is written in black Sharpie marker on the right side of SCP-6080. A simplistic face can be seen on the front of the box, also drawn in Sharpie. The ink has degraded significantly from age. SCP-6080 is animate and capable of propelling itself short distances. It also displays a degree of sapience and is able to communicate by vocalizing, despite the lack of vocal cords. The face drawn onto the front is capable of animating to match the vocalizations, expressing a variety of emotions. When SCP-6080 is in an emotionally heightened state, it will ontokinetically alter its physical surroundings to reflect elements of its psyche. Several methods of returning SCP-6080 to a passive state have been identified, although evoking a sense of nostalgia by placing SCP-6080 in a familiar environment is usually the most practical method. SCP-6080 is capable of unsealing and resealing the tape along its uppermost plane, allowing itself to open up and reveal several instances of SCP-6080-1 inside. During each opening, a separate collection of SCP-6080-1 is produced, and SCP-6080 will subsequently ask any persons present which instance of SCP-6080-1 they would like to view. SCP-6080-1 is the designation for the DVDs and VHS tapes produced by SCP-6080, which consist of various animated children's television shows and films. Nearly all known instances of SCP-6080-1 have contained an unaltered existing piece of media. One Once an instance of SCP-6080-1 has been viewed by a subject, the individual will experience a related anomaly, referred to as a rerun event. The delay between the rerun event and SCP-6080-1 viewing can vary drastically from person to person. The anomaly experienced is transient and reflects visual or thematic elements of the piece of media in question. Rerun events can range in severity from inconsequential and innocuous to severely harmful to their subjects. Rerun events may leave involved persons with non-lethal but lingering physical and psychological alterations, the details of which are listed in the Rerun Event Aftermath log. Amnestic treatment has been shown to only alleviate the psychological effects of the events slightly. SCP-6080 was discovered following a series of posts on the website parawatch.net that proclaimed the existence of a cursed VHS tape of Rocco's modern life. The tape was reported to have been obtained by the user through a transaction on eBay with a seller of the username Tune Collector. An investigation was conducted to identify and locate the seller, Jacob Sawyer, who was quickly discovered in Bakersfield, California. An exploration into Jacob Sawyer's household revealed him to be missing. Several VHS tapes and DVD cases, which were later revealed to be SCP-6080-1 instances, were discovered in Sawyer's home, along with a television. 161 hours of brief edited videos, all reviewing and commenting on various cartoons, were found on a hard drive linked to his personal computer. Matching content has yet to be found on any major video hosting sites. Underneath the house was a basement containing SCP-6080. SCP-6080 expressed intense emotional distress and actively avoided personnel within close proximity of it. SCP-6080 and all SCP-6080-1 instances within the house were taken into Foundation custody. Interview log. Following the capture of SCP-6080, an interview was scheduled to understand the source of the object's emotional distress and how to properly address it. The contents of this log are written below. Interviewer, researcher Rowan Raster. Interviewee, SCP-6080. Begin log. Hello, SCP-6080. Are you comfortable being called by your item number? Sounds of cardboard shuffling against the floor can be picked up on the interview microphone. I don't care about that. Hey, settle down, please. You'll hurt yourself if you do that too much. I understand that you're under a lot of stress, but I'll be able to help you a lot more if you tell me what caused it. I need to get out. Now! You don't understand. What's the matter? Why so anxious? SCP-6080's speech accelerates to the point of unintelligibility. What? The face drawn on the front of the box rapidly flips between different expressions as it speaks. Please, SCP-6080, I can't help you unless you tell me what's bothering you. SCP-6080 stops. An exhausted expression appears on his face. The lights within the interview chamber flicker. I'm sorry. I'm just so scared. I miss him so much. I'm nothing without him. Eric? Whoa. How'd you know? Oh, nothing concrete. Just a lucky guess. The lights stop flickering. Sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do that. Don't worry about it. Now that you're calmer, do you mind telling me what happened? I don't have any other choice. Oh, no, you don't have to right now if you don't want to. It's fine. I'll tell. It's hard for me to really put down. Can you imagine existing for someone? That's what I felt when I started existing. Started existing? Yeah, I guess. I still can't get it in my head. I woke up in this bedroom full of these dazzling toys and posters, and I just sort of knew what I was made for and who I was made by. It was scary at first. I think I yelped a bit, but then Eric looked worried, so I stopped. What caused you to stop? I didn't want to upset him. All these things are running through my head, but the most important thing to do was not upset the kid. It just was. Like that was what I was meant to do. I see. This is the Eric kid you mentioned before, yes? Yep. To the best of your ability, how would you describe them? I don't think I can do that right. How so? Every time I tried explaining to someone what he looked like, they were always all confused and scared. Are you sure that's not because you frightened them in some other way? How come? I look just like you, right? I guess my skin's a little pale, but, you don't. What's the matter? Never mind. I promise I won't be frightened if you tell me. Okay, well, he was very colorful. His body was blue and he had these 4 strands of hair on his head, and he also wore this shirt with 3 red stripes on it, and he had a nose that looks like mine but purple. His eyes and mouth were dark red too. Is this how you usually see people? Yeah, people are always colorful, like... wait, is that weird? Actually, don't tell me. I already have enough bumping through my head right now. Very well then, please continue. So, basically, I'm looking at this kid, and he tells me that he wants to watch SpongeBob. Then I open up my back, and there's a SpongeBob DVD. Does that hurt? It only really hurts when someone's forcing it open. Anyway, we were watching SpongeBob together and just having a good time when I noticed that Eric had this sad face. I asked him what was wrong, and he said that he wished SpongeBob was his friend. Then I had this idea. What did you do? I started concentrating on the show, and the bedroom started filling with water. And then we were with SpongeBob and all his friends. It was one of the best dag moments of my life. I've never seen Eric happier than when we had said it's not good to have a potty mouth. Oh, you may continue. So, me and Eric would always go on these adventures together. We would just explore the universes of all these cartoons, and it was wonderful. I think my favorite activity was talking with the characters we'd meet on our adventures. You know, I thought at first that since I was the one that always created it, that it would be me doing the characters, but I never felt in control of that. They always acted the way they wanted to. So you're saying that despite your anomaly relating to cartoon media, you didn't have control over the characters within that media? I don't have much control over anything at all. Ever since Eric left, mostly. He left? I don't know how much time passed. One day when I woke up, he was gone. I think he went on vacation because I looked for his other friends and they were gone. It was like, I don't know, he couldn't have just forgotten me like that, not after all the adventures we did. He couldn't have. I'm sure he didn't mean to. The interview chamber momentarily rumbles. I know he didn't mean it. Let me continue. I didn't want to make you upset. I'm sorry. No. I'm sorry. I didn't mean. So, yeah, I was alone. I didn't know what to do, and I panicked. I know hate is a strong word, but I did something that I still hate myself for. I ran out of the house. I should have stayed. Maybe he would have come back then. I can still picture what it was like being out there. I was running and asking anyone I could find, but they were all terrified. They kept running away from me. One of them even kicked me. I thought I'd get used to chaos, but this wasn't fun chaos. The sounds, the light, the people, it was so overwhelming, and I got lost. And then I found him. Jacob. I'm sorry to interrupt, but how would you describe Jacob's appearance? His entire body was really just different shades of red and orange. He was a bit of a headache to look at. Gotcha. When I met him at first, he looked terrified of me like everybody else. I got scared, and it looked like he was going to attack me like the last guy, so I just kind of opened myself up. I thought it would scare him, maybe. He just stood there momentarily and looked, and then he had this awful grin on his face. He said that I was going to be useful, and then he grabbed me hard. No matter how much I kicked and struggled, I couldn't get it out of his hands. I just wanted him to let go, but he wouldn't. He just yanked me. I thought I was going to break. The further and further away he took me, the sicker and sicker I felt. I wanted to throw up, but there wasn't anything in my stomach. We passed a lot of buildings and alleyways until he took me to his house. When he took me inside, it reminded me of Eric's a lot. There were posters, toys, and a whole bunch of DVDs and VHS tapes around. For a second, I thought this was Eric's new house, and that I was going to see him again, but then he took me into the basement. It was completely empty, just white concrete and white brick walls. He placed me on the floor, and with that same sneer he told me to open up. So I did. I opened up, and he pulled out everything inside of me. I was hoping if I did that he would let me go, but he just left and locked the door. A few hours later he came back and told me to open up again, and I said no. The interview chamber becomes cold, and paint begins to flake off the walls. He pulled me open. Every time I said no, he just pulled me open. Over and over, just emptying me out over and over again. Why couldn't you just take one? I don't even know what he was doing with these things. All he would tell me was that it was just business. I was a dispenser, a thing that's used and tossed away when he's done. I started to see patterns in the walls. The walls were white, and the ceilings were white, and the floor was white. I remember it clearly. White, 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 white. The walls within the chamber bleach white in color. Every time I fell asleep, I'd get these nightmares. It was always the same one. I would be with Eric, having the best time of my life, until something just pops up out of nowhere and attacks me. It was always something different every time. A chef cut my fingers off one by one. A mass of yarn strangled me until my eyes were bloody and popped out. A paper man gutted me and played with my intestines with his fingers. Even a gosh darn calculator yelled at me until my head heated up and boiled itself. But the worst thing, when it was happening to me, I could bear with it, maybe, but the surroundings, it was all just white. It was white, 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 white. Please. Researcher Raster embraces SCP-6080. The anomalous events within the chamber cease. SCP-6080 begins crying a viscous fluid of a similar composition to blueberry syrup. Please, 6080, you're safe now, I promise. We can take a break if this is too much for you. It's just so hard. Thank you so much for listening to me. I felt like it would have gone on forever. I thought I would have been stuck in the endless white, that it was punishment for something I'd done before. I thought I'd never get help. I'm sorry. Researcher Raster stops embracing SCP-6080. What you've been through is very, very traumatic. I don't blame you for reacting like you did at all. You shouldn't be sorry for that. Can I ask another question about this, though? Okay. Can you recall what happened before we got here? Well, one day, when I was still stuck in the basement, Jacob suddenly burst into the room with a furious look on his face. He started yelling at me, asking what I was doing to the cartoons he pulled out of me, and I asked what he meant, and I got picked up and thrown onto the floor as usual. He looked so bad. He got angry a lot, but I thought I was going to die there. and my head was in a spiral, and I barely noticed when he pulled something out of my back, some kind of DVD, and in the panic, I think I put something into it, but it was gone when he ran back inside. I could hear noises coming from his TV, so he was watching it, whatever it was. I went up to the door to listen, and it wasn't. I couldn't explain. I don't think it sounded like something that I normally carried. I heard this sharp burst of static, and this awful sounding scream. I think it was Jacob. Thank you very much for your cooperation. You've done a fantastic job explaining everything you've been through. Do you have any questions before we put you into your room? What's the room like? What do you want it to be like? Could you try to make it a bedroom? Like Eric's? I'll consult someone, but I think we can do that for you. Thank you so much. Oh, this is just wonderful. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Oh, one more question before we go. What's your favorite cartoon? Oh, that's a tough question. I feel the brave little toaster. How so? I don't know, I just see myself in a lot of the characters. I really like Lampy. SCP-6080 appears momentarily agitated. Yeah, can we end it now? Researcher Raster chuckles. Very well. End log. Notes. The containment protocols for SCP-6080 were installed shortly after. The DVD described was never located within the Jacob household. Testing log. The purpose of the following tests is to gather a full understanding of the nature of rerun events due to their unpredictable nature. Most of these tests take place within SCP-6080's containment chamber, which comes equipped with several items and accessories that are commonplace for a child's bedroom. SCP-6080 is usually escorted out of the room during these tests, as to not cause it emotional distress. The following is a list of notable rerun events. Notable rerun event number 1. SCP-6080-1 instance, Chalk Zone, from 2002. Subject D6332. Episode Rudy's First Adventure. Rerun event. Around 2 days after viewing, D6332 complains of boredom and walks towards the toy box within the chamber. D6332 opens the box to find a small chalkboard and a piece of chalk within the pile of toys. D6332 enthusiastically picks both of these items up, immediately drawing a circle onto the chalkboard using the chalk. An aperture to an extra-dimensional space, similar to the space depicted by the show, appears within the circle. D6332 is ecstatic, reporting that she is able to see several entities representing her childhood drawings within the space. D6332's enthusiasm quickly fades once she attempts to enter the extra-dimensional space, realizing realizing that she is unable to enter due to the inadequate size of the chalkboard. D6332 reaches out with her hand into the space, trying to extract one of the entities. Abruptly, the rerun event ceases activation, and the space within the circle disappears. D6332's hand reappears intersected with the chalkboard, leaving a hole in the material where her arm passed through. The chalkboard is carefully removed from the arm by use of a saw and knife. D6332 expresses disappointment that she didn't get to go to Chalk Zone and requests to view the 6080-1 instance again. This request is declined. Notable rerun event number 2. SCP-6080-1 instance, Rugrats, from 1991. Subject, D1711. Episode, In the Dream Time. Rerun event. After about 6 hours, D1711 appears disoriented, stating that everything within the bedroom looks tall. Further examination concluded that the subject is suffering from a case of intense sudden onset macropsia. After several complaints, the subject states that he is going to rest in an attempt to sleep it off. The subject turns off the lights within the chamber, lays on the bed, and begins to rest. 90 minutes after the onset of sleep, the lights within the chamber turn on, illuminating the room in a mix of blue and purple. A humanoid figure wearing a researcher's uniform can be seen within the room, facing the southwest corner of the wall. Its face is not visible, as it is facing away from the camera in the room. D1711 appears to experience physical discomfort while this occurs. The figure begins to turn around. Before its face is visible, the lights and television within the chamber turn off, and the figure disappears. Jovial laughter can be heard before its disappearance. D1711 wakes up and screams. Researcher Mulland, who was present during the test, runs towards the chamber door and opens it. Researcher Mulland allays D1711's fears, stating that nothing in a dream can ever hurt you because it isn't real. D1711 sighs and sits slowly down on the bed, stretching, whereupon he begins questioning Wallace as to why he woke up in shock. Wallace then contacts Control, inquiring why they ran into the containment chamber. The rerun event ends here. An analysis of D1711 after the rerun event reveals his slight inability to discern his dreams from reality. Other than this, D1711 has not been notably affected by the rerun event. The dream D1711 described experiencing mirrored the events of the dream in the episode D1711 viewed. Notes: researchers are not to stand near the containment chamber of SCP-6080 during testing. Access to the chamber during testing is only allowed upon request. Notable rerun event number 3. SCP-6080-1 instance, Caillou, from 1997. circus. Rerun Event. Immediately after the episode concludes, a door materializes on the south side wall of the containment chamber. The door bears a stylization similar to the entrance of the main house in Caillou. D2445 touches the door handle and recoils, shouting that it feels wet and soapy. D2445 is given a handheld camera and communication equipment before being told to enter the door. Complying, D2445 opens the door to an extra-dimensional replica of the house within the show. Subject quietly states that he feels unwelcome whilst entering. D2445 does not make contact with any objects in the house and often expresses discomfort when he nears an object. When questioned, D2445 tells researchers that he feels as if he touched anything within the house that it would smear. D2445 then states that the whole house smells fresh and felt like a dream. The camera picks up vocalizations from within another room near D2445, which were analyzed to be identical to dialogue within the episode. D2445 chuckles and walks near the vocalizations, stating that he is finally going to give that little brat what he deserves. Several demands are made towards D2445 not to initiate hostile contact with entities manifesting during the rerun event. D2445 ignores these demands and runs towards the vocalizations. D2445 enters a bathroom, inside which two entities are conversing. These two entities represent characters in Caillou, specifically the titular Caillou and his father, Boris. Caillou and Boris are reenacting the events from within the episode, seeming to both ignore D2445. D2445 points his finger at Caillou, reprimanding and insulting the entity. Caillou is screaming, becoming cognizant of D2445's presence in the room. Boris also becomes aware, looking directly at D2445 with a horrified expression. D2445 concludes the rant and laughs. Boris scowls and punches D2445 in the jaw. Subject is shocked and disoriented, stumbling onto the floor as a mixture of water and tan-colored paint bleeds from his face. The floor smears as D2445 presses against it, appearing to be composed entirely of paint. Boris tells D2445 to leave the house immediately, threatening that he does not want to know what will happen if he stays. D2445 panics and runs while Boris gives chase. D2445 frantically enters the door nearest him, shutting it behind himself. The screaming and shouting of the two entities cease. No sounds are audible other than D2445's labored breathing. The room D2445 enters is not consistent with any room within the show. It resembles a child's bedroom equipped with several posters, toys, and a television. The television powers on, displaying a heavily distorted animation of a single against the screen whilst conversing with the viewer. No audio plays. Television footage becomes indiscernible momentarily until it cuts to a featureless white void. Boris can be seen standing above the camera, looking into the lens, his face expressionless. Boris then begins to reach into the frame, his hand breaching the surface of the television. The view is obscured as the footage is overrun by orange-red haze, eventually becoming indecipherable before cutting off. The lights in the containment chamber shut off and turn back on to reveal D2445 standing, covered in tan watercolor paint. His body is pale in various areas, and several bruises can also be seen. D2445 repeatedly apologizes to researchers before passing out on the floor. Analysis of D2445 revealed dissociation, a phobia of children and their parental figures, and a feeling of emptiness. D2445's blood consisted of a mixture of water and soluble paint. Despite this, the subject displays no health complications. Notes: slight deviations from the source material have been noted. It is unknown what the significance of these deviations are. Notable Rerun Event Number 4. SCP-6080-1 Instance King from 2003. Subject D6671. Episode Down to Under. Rerun Event. 5 days after viewing, an endoscopic-like apparatus extends from beneath the bed and probes around the containment chamber while D6671 is sleeping. The device stares down at D6671 for about 3 minutes before D6671 wakes up, causing the mechanism to quickly retreat back under the bed. Inspection underneath the bed reveals nothing. D6671 reports dreaming about being given a back massage. During this dream, the massage becomes increasingly uncomfortable until the subject awakens, feeling a sharp pain and having heard a wet tearing noise from behind. D6671 then returns to resting in the bed until sunrise. The following day, D6671 notices an object underneath the bed. D6671 crawls underneath the bed and pulls out a yellow crown with a headband, similar to the one depicted within the show, constructed out of cardboard. D6671 inspects the crown, comments on its resemblance, and places it upon his head. After this, many gradual anomalous changes to Site-443 were later noted. Despite the obvious notability of most of these changes, everyone in Site-443 at the time of the rerun event appears oblivious to them. Following D6671 initially placing the crown upon his head, the color scheme of Site-443 changed into a mix of both yellows and purples, and the sky viewed through Site-443's windows changed into a light yellow. Following these changes, a large humanoid entity manifested within one of Site-443's hallways, followed by two small, seemingly amphibious entities who quickly latched onto the large entity's back. All entities appeared in the guise of Foundation researchers. The humanoid appears to be a balding, overweight Caucasian male, capable of speaking, albeit in a notably hoarse and scratchy tone of voice. Its eyes bulge from their orbits, its skin is loose and scarred, and it wears crudely stitched together clothing encrusted with iron oxide flakes. Its hands are missing several fingers and partially hidden under non-standard issue gloves, and clusters of steel barbs protrude from its skin and clothing in several areas. Several passing researchers greet the entity, referring to the humanoid as Researcher Robert Wire. Researchers near Researcher Wire behave as if it were a recently employed member of the Foundation. During conversation, one researcher inquires about Wire's voice, asking if Wire is ill or if it has a sore throat. Another researcher suggests taking it to a medical ward. Researcher Wire vehemently and repeatedly denies being ill, stating that it is fine several times before also stating that it needs to do an important, very smart research thing. Researcher Wire clumsily leaves the hallway and bumps into several researchers in the process. Once out of view, two researchers can be seen frozen in apparent confusion at what just happened, before one states that Researcher Wire was probably just having a bad day. Everyone present within the hallway replies in agreement and continues as if nothing strange had transpired. 2 hours after the entity's first manifestations, all three manifest near Request Room 6080 and enter. Researcher Wire's skin appears significantly more deteriorated, and it holds a scroll in its right hand. Researcher Harris Wilkins, who was present during the entrance, welcomes Researcher Wire. Researcher Wire requests access to D6671's crown for testing and places the scroll, whose surface is obscured with growths of rust, onto the request room desk. Researcher Wilkins looks at the scroll, states it really is difficult to find paper in the office, isn't it, and begins reading, seeming to easily comprehend it despite its illegibility. Researcher Wilkins looks skeptically at Researcher Wire for a moment. Both amphibious entities, who are donning small papier-mâché masks resembling simplistic human faces, give a visible thumbs up. Researcher Wilkins looks at the two entities, smiles, and grants Researcher Wire permission. All leave the room. Meanwhile, within SCP-6080's containment chamber, several items and furniture begin to transform into organic facsimiles. The toy box turns into a light shade of pink and sprouts large eyeballs upon its top, as well as teeth across its opening. A chair becomes yellow and sprouts eye stalks, as well as several hair follicles growing across its body. These changes cause D6671 a considerable amount of discomfort. D6671 displays mild paranoia, stating that he feels as if something wants the crown in its possession. 6080's containment chamber, and researcher Wire knocks on the door. D6671 freezes for a short period of time, walks towards the door, and reluctantly opens it. Researcher Wire greets D6671, who appears distraught, and asks D6671 for the crown. D6671 begins backing away, asking what Researcher Wire needs it for. Researcher Wire states that it is for a test. D6671 replies, asking what the test is. Researcher Wire responds that it is a testing test. Researcher Wire's body begins to shudder and lose composure, appearing slightly unstable. D6671 grimaces, noticing a brownish-red fluid oozing out of several of the scars on Researcher Wire's body. Researcher Wire reacts defensively, stating that it's just a skin conditioner. One of the amphibious entities emerges from behind, attempting to discreetly educate it about the difference between a condition and a conditioner. D6671 begins hyperventilating and backs further away. Researcher Wire grimaces, appearing irritated, and tells the subject that he has nothing to be afraid of. This is immediately followed by one of Researcher Wire's eyeballs stiffly popping upright out of its socket, revealing an eye stalk constructed entirely out of rusty barbed wire. The brown fluid begins pooling out of the socket and onto the floor. One staff member monitoring the event is immediately overwhelmed by feelings of nausea and begins vomiting a reddish-orange colored bile. They continue vomiting, excreting more material than a human stomach can contain. This staff member is ignored throughout the entire rerun event. Researcher Wire struggles to explain the open cavity within its face and tears at itself in frustration, spilling fluid from several areas. Researcher Wire tears the last of its skin off, revealing itself to be a slug-like humanoid constructed entirely out of rusty barbed wire, similar to the show's primary villain, Bob Wire. Bob Wire demands D6671 to hand over the crown, threatening physical violence if he doesn't comply. D6671 refuses and throws one of the organic chairs at Bob Wire. The chair splinters into pieces and splatters an opaque yellow fluid onto its surroundings. Bob Wire is angered and orders the two amphibious entities to subdue D6671. The two entities take off their masks, showing a resemblance to the frags within the show. The entities begin pursuing D6671. D6671 screams and runs towards the bed within the containment chamber, crawling underneath it. All entities follow suit, diving head first underneath the bed. The colors within Site 443 change back to their original state, and the furniture in the containment room returns to their normal forms. The reddish-orange vomit congeals into a humanoid shape, which vocalizes a high-pitched breathing and dissipates into a mist. The rerun event ends here. The fluid secreted by the skin of Researcher Wire was found to be a mixture of iron oxide, blood, and pus. DNA samples of the skin and blood have been whereabouts are unknown. Notes: after this test, personnel are required to fill out a form before interacting within a rerun event. It has also been proposed that testing outside of SCP-6080's containment chamber may be necessary to avoid a possible wide-scale incident. Notable Rerun Event Number 5. SCP-6080-1 Instance, Teacher's Pet, from 2004. Subject D-1032. Additional notes. Due to several concerns regarding the events of previous testing, D-1032 was relocated outside of Site-443 for the purposes of this test. Rerun Event. 12 hours after exposure, D-1032 becomes fixated on the desire of becoming a dog. One researcher asks D-1032 why they desire becoming a dog, and D-1032 simply states that after viewing the SCP-6080-1 instance, they figured out they wanted to be a dog. The researcher asks D-1032 how they came to this conclusion. D-1032 tells the researcher that they're glad they asked. D-1032 begins to sing while orchestrated music of an unknown source plays in the background. The song's lyrical content consists of D-1032 describing to the researchers within the area several reasons as to why they desire to be a dog. The desire, as explained in the song, is not out of curiosity, but rather a belief that they would be better off as a dog than as a human. Researchers report intense visual and sensory hallucinations whilst the music and song are heard. These hallucinations consist of surreal visual accompaniments to the lyrics, rendered in the film's animation style, described by one of the researchers as disorienting, and as if a projector was going off inside my eyes. Sensory hallucinations include the scent of cookie dough and the ground having the texture of clay. The visuals, as reported by the researchers, consisted mainly of a large, lengthy classroom with a chalkboard. D-1032 would utilize the chalkboard to explain and illustrate the various reasons why becoming a dog would be the logical choice. These illustrations would become fully colored and animate once drawn. The researchers experiencing these hallucinations attempt to sabotage D-1032's performance, accusing them of being a wacko for their desire and chasing the subject around the room. D-1032 continues singing, dancing, and writing mathematical equations onto the board for 4 minutes, deftly evading the researchers. When the music cuts out, the researchers are lying on the ground panting, surrounded by pools of sweat. The sound of a vehicle motor can be heard from afar. D-1032 appears excited upon hearing this sound. A travel trailer, similar to the one depicted within the film, speeds through the testing area and strikes one of the researchers, who is launched a considerable distance by the impact. The researcher, showing no signs of injury, promptly walks off. D-1032 runs up to the trailer in anticipation. The trailer doors open, revealing an exact replica of the trailer's interior within the film, constructed entirely of storyboard pencil-sketched entities resembling characters within the film are seen crowding the trailer before turning toward D-1032 in choppy motions. D-1032 enters the trailer, which then hastily departs, striking the same researcher it had collided with before. 2 hours later, after the rerun event has been assumed complete, the trailer returns to the testing area, narrowly missing the previously struck researcher and colliding with the wall. In the wreckage, a multicolored, sweet-smelling substance, along with several translucent white chunks, are seen caking the vehicle and strewn about the floor. The trailer doors swing open and a singular entity hops to the ground, a tan, hairless dog resembling the film's primary character, Spot Helperman. Helperman is overjoyed, telling researchers several times that their wish came true. Despite the entity's shape, its voice is that of D-1032. The researcher states, "Well, now what?" and Spot Helperman ceases movement. Immediately, all present researchers cease movement, turning to look at the trailer, which is fracturing into multiple pieces, white light shining through the cracks. The trailer then ruptures, luminosity increasing to extreme levels and scattering monochrome lines into the air. When the light fades, the entire testing area is rendered in the style of a pencil-sketched storyboard. Several within the vicinity shake their heads and complain of feeling coarse. Panic rises among the researchers, although Spot Helperman has yet to move. Panicked researchers attempt to escape the testing area, but are hampered by extreme nausea and disorientation. One researcher describes the feeling as walking through negative space. After 27 minutes of confusion, an unidentified researcher proposes that they sing their way out. Beethoven's Sonata No. 14 begins playing as the researchers gather into a straight line and take turns to explain in the song why they want the rerun event to end. The musical number continues for 8 minutes before ending, the piano music following suit. 3 minutes pass while researchers wait until one researcher screams in frustration and runs towards the still immobile Spot Helperman. The subject rears back and violently kicks Spot Helperman in the face. As this happens, people nearby cover their eyes, reporting obscured vision due to thick masses of rapidly animated pencil scribbles. The scribbles fade as the testing area is converted back to its normal state. Spot Helperman is missing, replaced with an incapacitated humanoid figure laying face first on the ground, its appearance being similar to the one depicted on the television during the Caillou test. A puddle of multicolored fluid, like that of the substance splattered upon the trailer, begins to form around the head of the figure. The entity trembles and pushes itself off the ground, stands up, and turns to face the researcher. Dark blue tears streak down its face. One of its eyes is heavily bruised, and its nose bleeds the same multicolored researcher and stumbles, kneeling onto the floor. The figure coughs, then speaks in the voice of SCP-6080, although its mouth does not move in time with its words. Will Eric ever forgive me for this? I don't know what I'm doing wrong. And the figure falls to the ground, bringing its arms to its chest, and demanifests. The rerun event ends here. D-1032 is located resting within their designated cell on a pile of $6.5 million US. When D-1032 is woken, they express disappointment in the pile, stating, "Not worth it at all." When questioned, D-1032 claims that they are now undecided on whether or not they want to become a dog. Other than this, the subject displays no ill effects from the rerun event. Several researchers request amnestic therapy after the conclusion of the test. Notes: after this test, it has been deemed that further rerun events are to be done utilizing isolated D-class with helmet-mounted camera equipment, as to not risk the mental health of the researchers partaking in testing. Notable rerun event number 6. SCP-6080-1 instance, Cartoon All-Stars to the Rescue, from 1990. Subject D-9926. Additional notes: D-9926 was granted a helmet-mounted camera and communication headset. Subject was also sent to a quarantined community due to researcher safety concerns. Rerun event. 10 hours after exposure, while D-9926 sleeps in his bedroom, the doorknob of the bedroom door begins to jitter frantically, as if it is being prevented from opening. D-9926 is startled by the sudden noise and wakes up. The jittering stops and is followed by the sound of several loud knocks upon the door. D-9926 gets up from his bed and walks towards the door in annoyance, quickly glancing behind him before opening the door. 4 entities representing cartoon characters enter the room, quickly surrounding D-9926. A man in a gray hoodie crawls behind him, puppeteering a Kermit the Frog figure, which in turn holds out a small clump of cannabis bud. Following it is a tall figure wearing a felt Garfield costume, carrying a powdery white substance, as well as a cardboard cutout of Bugs Bunny, to which is stapled a small baggie of black resin. The final figure entering the room is a 2-meter-tall Alf plush, who completes the circle around D-9926. It holds out a small paper tab printed with a yellow smiley face image. The figures sing, primarily sharing the same shrill voice, pitched to different intonations depending on the singer. As the entities continue singing, D-9926 turns to keep them within his line of sight, avoiding physical contact. Don't do this. Don't do this. Don't do this. Don't do this. Marijuana shows. Heroin's a villain, always giving you addiction, and LSD will make you see the world's a work of fiction. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. D9926 responds by saying, "That's nice. A great song. Could you please back off now?" After 30 seconds of continued singing, a leg connected to a black boot impacts the ground, reaching out through a nearby windowsill. The rest of the body follows, a gray-skinned humanoid with wrinkled trousers, a creased shirt, and an overlarge necktie decorated with cannabis leaves. The gray figure begins speaking to D9926. "Hey, huh? You need to get away from these freaks, don't you?" "Yep, right now, actually. Just run this way. Thank God." D9926 shoves Garfield and Bugs Bunny in order to reach the gray entity. The entities continue to sing and maneuver around, despite D9926 not being present. "The window, right? Let me pull you up. Grab my hand. Thank you. Whoa." The surroundings consist of an asphalt path bounded by trees in an outdoor nighttime environment. Light sources reminiscent of sodium lights are regularly spaced behind the trees to the right, providing illumination at a low angle. A light rain and a downward slope to the left prevent illumination from reaching past the immediate area. The asphalt transitions to a field of grass as the pair walk on, and the gray entity stops, twisting his face as if at a foul smell. "Why'd we stop?" "We're here." "Where?" "A field, it looks like." D9926 visually scans the surrounding area. "It looks like? So you've had no clue where you've been taking me all this time?" "The only visible place to walk was a road. You'd rather have gone somewhere else?" "No, I'd rather..." "Jesus, you really don't know what's going on either, do you?" "Pardon? Are you not, like, part of this place? You're definitely more put together than the other guys back there." Gray entity rubs his eyes with his hands. No, God, just... This place is tired. I didn't get most of what I needed. Those four got none of it. At the very least, you won't be stuck here with me like you would have with them." "Tired, huh? You look tired. Implied you could get me out of this place, too." "What does this place look like? It's a PSA on drugs. And it's trying to get you to refuse to take them. Problem with that is that I doubt your friends back there have any idea when to stop." "So where does that leave us?" "You take the acid." "Excuse me? I think I understand how this place works. You want to muck up the message, fail the quiz, get kicked out, Gray entity holds out a multicolored paper tab. "You take the acid." "Are you even part of this place? You're giving me drugs, and I don't even know what you are. What's your name, anyway?" I don't know. Weed Man. And I told you, this place is tired. We've both been here for what? A few minutes, but it's already at a dead end. You want to take the tab or what? And you think it'll break us out of here? There's one way to find out. Might as well. 6 seconds past the point of ingestion, the camera feed blacks out as D9926 falls to the ground. D9926's head-mounted camera begins recording autonomously, its lens partially buried in soil or decaying plant matter. According to the camera's internal clock, nearly 16 minutes have passed. D9926 grunts and picks up the camera and holds it facing downward, lens still pointing at the ground. A rustling sound is heard as D9926 presumably gets to his feet, and the point of view sways as he walks. D9926 abruptly stops and affixes his camera to his helmet, bringing into view the gray entity from earlier in the test, standing in a dimly lit forested space. The gray entity appears concerned. "Where'd you take me? Where'd I... Dude, what are... You bastard, where'd you take me? I didn't. I know as well as you where this place is. No tricks. I might have passed out, but we're definitely not where we started. The air's thick, and it smells like... I knew something was wrong." "You knew?" Buddy, I don't know where the hell I am any more than you do. Back where we were, it felt like something was leaking, or about to break. And I should have known that ending our scene up there would do something like this. When you went, I got dragged with. You didn't want to come here either. How long was I out? Out? Like, unconscious. You got dragged here awake when your little episode ended, I take it? Wish I didn't. Felt like an elevator went out under me. You've been in an elevator? Never mind. Let's look around and see if we can't find out where we are. Smells horrible in here. I mean, first rule of survival training, follow water to civilization. There isn't any water here, but... D9926 looks around, panning his camera. The surroundings are thickly forested with conifers and deciduous trees, the ground covered in rotting leaf matter and pine needles. The sky is a smoky orange red and provides very little light. The camera fixates on a distant luminescent object, seeming to be a window recessed into a concrete wall. Well, no need for water when the civilization's right there. That's our best bet. Find someone to ask how we'd leave this place. Sky's a tell, too. Something's lighting it up in that direction. Was gonna say, something seems off about the sky. Hopefully it's some kind of city. D9926 and the gray entity walk toward the distant building. Approaching it, it becomes clear that the structure is recessed into the ground, with only one window to a lit interior. Half-buried concrete stairs lead from under the ground cover to the building's roof. D9926 breathes heavily, exhausted. Either distance is weird or that was further than I thought. Don't be a baby. And no, it's just hard to see in this dark. Hard to walk, too. Something clingy all in between the dead leaves. I guess that's where the smell is coming from. So, take the rooftop route, or do we find a way in? The gray entity gestures at the concrete stairs. You check the window. I'll use the higher vantage point. The gray entity walks out of shot as D9926 begins climbing. Nope, doesn't seem to be a way inside. It doesn't look very safe in there either. I see needles I don't like the look of. And I'm speaking from my own knowledge. Stay alert, let me follow, and figure out the source of that song here. That song? The camera's microphone picks up a faint ambient music, getting louder as the pair near the building's roof. Don't like the sound of that. Me either, but sounds like it's coming from up ahead. I'd rather keep going than rot back in those woods. The pair begin to walk forward along the building's roof, which continues indefinitely past the small area that is visible. Deviating slightly from the direction of the red glowing portion of sky, D9926 and the gray entity approach a distant string of lights suspended high above ground. After 6 minutes of walking without communication, the ground becomes visible, an expanse of painted, poured tarmac running alongside a shrub-filled landscape. The string of suspended lights is now visible as a series of sodium street lamps spaced above a low-hanging power line. Parking lot. D9926 stumbles as the asphalt begins sloping slightly downhill. The gray entity turns, looking at him. Damn it. Almost lost my footing there. Weed man? Yeah? God, I need to find you another name. Was gonna say, the music hasn't stopped. The pair continue walking. Smell hasn't either. You said a city is off in this direction? No, I think it was you who said that. Good observation, though. The frequency of street lamps increases, and small unknown structures of steel pipe are intermittently visible. The pair's footsteps crunch. This is longer than any real parking lot has a right to be. I'm starting to doubt that there's a real city down here. I mean, it looks a lot more built up where we're going. Over there is a desert. And what tells you this place makes any sense to begin with? Vomit on the asphalt and it feels like the air is pushing my brain in. What's to say cities work like normal in here? I don't know. Don't know how your world's put together. Just feels like we're going somewhere. Not much space for this place to do otherwise. You gotta give me more than that, dude. How my world fits together. As far as I know, you're not from this place either, and I'm finding it kind of sketchy to trust you when you say this stuff with no real proof of it. I'm from places like this, as much as I'm someone at all. Problem is, your world tends to fit together nice and neat, and mine just doesn't. Where you're from, you can be told that things make sense, and trust that. Or, no, not for a while. That's so. No stories without plot holes, is it? I'm holding out hope that I can get my head around this, somehow. How? How does any of this make sense? You just learn to get a sense for things no matter what, dude. You learn to follow your gut. If it feels right, it's usually worth looking into. But I see no reason why bumming off into the bush is going to solve our problems in a place of this single track. The pair's footsteps stop. D9926 glances upward from the stain-covered ground to the reddish area of sky in the distance. You talk about this place like it has a consciousness. Is this the weed thing you have going on, or weed thing was barely a thing anyway? And from what I'm guessing, a consciousness is inherent to this place. I'd hesitate to say it's got feelings and goals, but you see a running theme here, right? Running theme? You can point out anything in particular? The gray entity stops once again, eyes fixated on the horizon. City lights. At least, I think. Something's glowing down there. City lights? I don't look there. In the distance. way past where the streetlights end. D9926 changes position, putting a hand to his cheek to stabilize the view. Mostly unobstructed, the power line and streetlights end a few hundred meters ahead. Behind that is a broad, unlit expanse, still sloping downward, dotted by small, reddish, twinkling lights in the far distance. In the middle of nowhere, looks like. Doesn't entering an empty expanse of nothing go against your whole thing? But it's not empty. The streetlights end, but the street doesn't. And if I'm right, there should be a convenient vehicle right about. The gray entity turns back and to the right. And there we go. D9926's camera focuses on a beige sedan parked askew on one of the parking spaces nearby, resembling but not identical to a Honda Civic from the mid-2010s. Light does not penetrate its windows, and its rear license plate is blurry and indistinct. Wherever we went when you passed out, it's nearby. Things seem to work like I'm used to, even if they're much more uncomfortable to be in. You stand there. I'll look and see if I can find a way in. As the gray entity walks to the driver's side door, D9926 fixates on the car's license plate. Numbers occasionally appear on its surface, as well as black printed glyphs, only resembling the Arabic numeral system superficially. You got it? I think I've got it. It's harder than I'm used to, but somewhere in my head, I've got knowledge on picking a car door lock with a piece of wire. I've always wanted to try this out. The gray entity curses softly, manipulating the lock with a series of sharp movements. His face and arms are partially obscured by the car's body and hood. Got in. And I think the light switch is. He leans his upper body in through the open car door, becoming obscured from the camera's view. For 15 seconds, the gray entity leans forward, unmoving. D9926 does not move from his place. The gray entity can be heard muttering to himself before rapidly pulling out of the car. He slams the car's door. It's all just white. What? It's all just white in there, all the way down. So of course we're not driving. This can't be right. It's such a long. We'll walk and figure out what the hell's going on. I need some time to think. After roughly 30 minutes of walking, the lights in the distance become near enough to illuminate parts of the surroundings. This, combined with the reflection of light off clouds in the distance, makes visible several concrete building edifices to either end of the primary roadway. Come on, weed man. I can't keep up with you. I told you, I can't keep up with you. You gotta stop picking crap off the ground and staring at it. You trying to find a body? That's that's not funny. Look, we passed a clump of buildings back there. We're further than I thought. We'd be even further if, holy hell, actual buildings. How did I not notice these? They're backlit. Concrete buildings rise up on either side of the pair, and the main road is strewn with rubble and litter. Behind an empty window, an indistinct shape expands, although neither party seems to react. Yeah, I can see him blocking the light. They look empty, though. Hey, empty is something. Shelter is a shelter, anyhow. Weed man, it's hot as... And if we're stuck here for the long haul, I'd rather have a place to sleep. You need sleep? Yes, I do. And if we're really stuck together, I'd rather you don't call me Weed Man. Alright. I gave you that name up there because I had barely anything to work with. This place is not that, but I'm not supposed to be here at all if the scenery is anything to go off of. So what am I calling you? The name I use between jobs. Gray. D9926 nods and falls silent. A cluster of shadowed objects hangs affixed to a nearby wall, only protruding segments of which catch the light. On the upper corner of a different building, a figure moves behind a cover. D9926's vision, however, is trained forward, fixed on the gray entity's back. A gray? Yes. We're coming here to look for people, right? Yeah. And the best way to ask about a way out is to find civilization? Uh-huh. And that's why we're walking through a city right now. Yep. Have you considered that we've apparently just reached our destination and the whole place is entirely goddamn empty? We've spent an hour walking down a broken street in hot, stagnant air that smells like barf down toward a city we just assume contains answers to our problems. In a nightmare realm inside an acid trip inside a kid's PSA about drugs. I don't know if there's a lesson I'm supposed to be learning, but you're oh so sure, despite your ignorance, that there's a reason why we're down here. Why do you seem all weirdly cheery about this? Shuffling sounds are picked up from one of the nearby buildings, followed by that of something soft and fabric-like falling to the ground. Have you considered that this story isn't made for us? What do you mean? What do you think happens when you find your portal out of this place? What do you think happens to me? You think I'll become human and go back to some farmhouse in Kansas? Or am I about to be whisked off to yet another nightmare, deposited in a dilapidated room wearing a marijuana suit? Huh? You weren't there on purpose. So can you blame me? Can you blame me after dozens upon dozens of half-baked dreams where my role is stuck and unchanging? After enough hasty, half-baked dreams to fill up a shelf, I might be excited at something that doesn't need me in it. A place I can just explore. The pairs of walking slows as D9926 kicks aside a length of rusty metal, sending it rolling into a pile of wet cardboard by the road's edge. Back at the forest, you weren't just talking about leaving this one place, were you, Gray? The gray entity nods. This place is, admittedly, really unpleasant. Stinks. It's really not my aesthetic. You have to understand, though, breaking through to a dark place like this, even if it sucks, it's still breaking through. Laying by the side of the road on top of a rusty metal wheelbarrow is a human cadaver lit partially by red light from the distance. It is Caucasian, with a ripped white t-shirt and thinning black hair, and a rough, long rupture runs down its sternum, revealing a hollow interior. Although it keeps a human-like shape, the cadaver's face is limp, eyes and mouth opening to an empty cavity without the support of a skull. D9926 and the gray entity stop for a moment, viewing at it from a distance. Now, that's a bad sign right there. Still keen on exploring? The gray entity sighs. Don't tell me you haven't seen worse. Don't tell me you want to walk away. You can, you know. I know you've seen horrors like this and had no choice where to walk to. How do you know all this? Was this some kind of trick all along? Come on, let's keep going. And it's not a trick, not at all. Judging from these gross coveralls you're wearing, those boots, the state of your hair, I've met your kind, or people I've talked to have. You didn't want to come here either, did you? D9926 shakes his head. If I'm right, you're stuck in some dingy room underground, carted off to horror after horror because all the people in charge care about is collecting as much information as they can. You have no choice, not really, and usually you're told how to stand, how to look, where to go, but they didn't send you here on purpose either. Not this place in particular. And now that you can speak freely, walk freely, explore, fewer buildings obstruct the red light in the distance, revealing a distant sheet of glowing crimson. In the foreground, the enhanced light reveals what previously seemed to be strewn about lumps, as hollowed-out cadavers similar to the ones seen earlier. Each corpse is identical in clothing and physical features, with variations in how they have ruptured. A wide face, colored solid orange and shaped different from the rest, is seen peeking out from among them. We're in a dark place. The only good I can say is that it isn't our darkness. We can walk away from here if you really want to. I can't guarantee where you'll go or if you'll even like it, but you could just walk into the darkness and leave this place be. Eventually you'll emerge somewhere else, free from being a prop in whatever story they're telling. I can't say one way or another, but I might agree. I don't want to end up as part of the scenery. Yeah? The pair turns to the left, off the road, and into an alley between unlit buildings. A figure scampers on the roofs. Then let's get walking. I think taking that tab I gave you back there broke the cycle for both of us. That place was tired, and I was too. I'd like to control what story From the overhanging roof on the right side of the alley, a large rectangular object is tipped from the edge and the periphery of the camera's vision. The object, now visible as a large sheet metal shelving unit, drops 35 feet until it impacts, edge first, the nape of the gray entity's neck. After striking, it continues to fall, ripping a path down the center of his spine before exiting between his legs. The gray entity is peeled into two rough pieces on the ground, connected by head, ribs, and abdominal skeletal muscle, while a rapid wheezing sound is heard from the building up above. D9926 faces the body, turns in the opposite direction, and runs. D9926 rapidly turns 180 degrees and runs, turning into a narrow space between buildings. He peers upward to see the orange figure standing on the eaves, wielding a thick lead pipe like a spear to be thrown directly downward. In retaliation, D9926 tosses a scrap of metal in the figure's direction and misses wildly, but both figure and pipe disappear. Exiting the narrow space, D9926 begins to turn left, then reverses direction after a blurred orange shape is briefly visible. The street, although facing away from the flickering wall of light, slopes downward at a steep angle, and D9926 stumbles onto his knees multiple times as he runs. Again, a fast, high-pitched breathing becomes audible, although D9926 does not look backward. D9926 slows as a dark mass obstructs the alley, a cluster of identical hollowed-out bodies stitched together from mouth to mouth and between blown-open torsos. Air is forced out through and between them, causing lips and skin to billow. D9926 takes a breath, then gags, coughing. Looking in the other direction, the orange entity is seen approaching, and although its chest does not move, the sound of breathing speeds up. A high-pitched noise of rushing air overwhelms the microphone, and D9926 lunges into the mass of bodies to escape, swimming between them and tearing a thread that connects them together. Ripping through a last layer of hollowed-out bodies, D9926 collapses to his hands and knees on the pavement. He inspects his palms, which are cut, although bleeding a viscous brown fluid in place of blood. He stands up for a moment, walks further into the street, and then vomits. Although large volumes appear to splash against the ground, the process is silent. D9926 turns to the left, entering an empty industrial park littered with corpses. He runs, looking over his shoulder repeatedly before a ripping sound is heard. D9926 falls to the ground, and the camera turns toward his leg, caught on a tangle of barbed wire protruding from the mouth of a nearby cadaver. He rips it free, grunting loudly, and continues running, leaving a trail behind him as that same brown fluid exudes from the wound. He enters a building's open garage and closes a door behind himself before slowing down. The room D9926 finds himself in is clean, lit by fluorescent lights. It is roughly 10 meters in width and many times longer, lined with 2 rows of wide computer monitors at open-plan desks facing inward. The images shown on the screens consist of various frames of an unknown 3D animation, rendered in a format resembling the Presto software interface. The computers go dark as D9926 passes, or switch to show unrelated images. The screen in focus depicts the corpse of a domestic golden retriever lying within a wrecked camper van, surrounded by cheering humans. On the next, a severed human arm lies on a tile floor, appearing to be fused by a protruding ulna to a handheld chalkboard. Other screens depict a twin-size bed stained with urine, a mixture of blue paint and human blood, and a crack in concrete which is seeping with water. D9926's own breathing intensifies as he exits the room at a run as the lights shut off behind him. He passes through a hallway lined with shelves stacked with boxes, opening up into a warehouse of unknown dimensions, containing the same shelves repeated as far as the camera can see in either direction. For 16 minutes, D9926 runs along a concrete floor before coming to a stop, exhausted, at the warehouse's far wall. A door is inset into the concrete wall, which D9926 opens, collapsing on his hands and knees on the other end. The room behind the wooden door is small and charred, with detritus littering the floor. It is a bedroom furnished with a small bed and nightstand at one end, bearing an exposed light bulb on a plastic base. Opposite the bed, in front of D9926's location, is a large CRT television, partially obscuring a half-burned teddy bear on a chest. The room is dominated by a circular rug covered in burn marks, and an oversized security camera looks in from the corner. The door shuts. D9926 begins to cry. His sobs grow in intensity, punctuated by coughing due to the ash-filled air. D9926 stands up, pacing around the room before the CRT television switches on, showing what seems to be a security feed in a different room. The room in the feed is white, unfurnished, with white painted brick walls and concrete flooring. A small section of the floor on the screen is obscured, blocked by a patch of pixels fluctuating black and brown. The television plays the sound of footsteps on a hard surface, nearing the room as a door creaks open. Simultaneously, the door to the room he is in opens as well. D9926 screams, picks up a book, and smashes the CRT television from across the room. The screen shatters, and D9926's camera feed goes dark. The video resumes with small amounts of corruption present in its file. As the television implodes, cracks begin to spread from the room's ceiling, encompassing the entire room in less than a second. The fragments begin to rain down, obscuring all vision. D9926 steps forward when visual clarity is restored and looks ahead. A long iron fence is visible, stretching from horizon to horizon, beyond which is a sheet of red mist extending hundreds of meters into the air and moving violently like a flame. D9926 backs up and looks over his shoulder to a steep upward slope of rocky ground. D9926 turns back and flinches. Before the fence stands the red-faced figure that had been pursuing him, who now stands motionless on a flat section of ground. What do you... The figure walks towards D9926, driving him to stumble and fall backward before stepping carefully over his feet. D9926 takes a deep breath and shouts, "What the hell do you want with me?" The figure pauses for a moment and cocks its head quizzically, momentarily frowning. It looks at D9926 and plunges its fingerless hand into its side. It winces, then pulls out a cordless power drill fused partially into its left arm. D9926 screams and chokes. The figure switches on the power drill and leans forward. One elbow covers his mouth and face, while the other arm holds the drill bit at the center of his forehead. A grinding sound is heard. At the sound of a distant shout, the drilling ceases, the figure turning its head toward the source. The shout repeats. Sawyer. The figure appears puzzled and switches the drill back on, turning toward the camera once again. Sawyer, it's Box. The drill cuts out. "I'm back. Leave the man alone." D9926, now free to breathe, lets out a short sob and takes a deep breath. He raises one trembling hand to his forehead, which comes away stained with a small spot of blood. He exhales, shuddering, and pushes himself to his feet. D9926 turns toward the source of the voice, identifying itself as Box, revealing the pale-skinned, child-sized humanoid from the teacher's pet test, wearing untied sneakers, a t-shirt, and ripped shorts. They stand nearby, pointing a finger at the red-faced figure. Box speaks, and its voice resembles that of SCP-6080, as in the past, but slightly older, lower. "I didn't know this place existed." The figure, referred to as Sawyer, walks back to the gate as the wall of red mist flares with a burst of sound. It lets a box cutter knife fall into its hand. "This has been down here all this time, hasn't it?" Sawyer doesn't move. "You've been here all this time. What did I do to you?" Sawyer advances, brandishing the knife. It plunges its knife into the wall of mist behind itself. The knife comes back out, red hot. Box backs up, and intermittent streams of semi-solid pulp begin to pour from behind the lengths of fence. "What did I do to you?" Box shrieks as a rusty mass of barbed wire is thrown in their direction. They jump out of the way, landing on their knees on rough stone. They push themselves to their feet, panting. Box closes their eyes and concentrates, and lines appear in the air, sketching out a rickety wooden structure beneath their feet. As it grows more and more defined, Box is pushed by the structure further into the air. Sawyer stands at the base of it, looking up. "Why am I even here?" Box pauses to catch their breath. "What am I even doing in this place? This place that I'm guessing I made?" The wood structure creaks, although there is no wind. "How long were you in here, stewing like this? Since you..." Box gulps. "Were you going to kill him?" Sawyer's torso elongates. He grips his hands around the base of the wooden structure as his arms elongate too. "Why?" Sawyer tosses the knife to the side as he continues to stretch, winding around wooden beams and over lengths of crumpled paper. "I followed him, you know. Sent in a friend of mine, too, who you killed for no reason." Box begins to sob. "And now you're angry, huh? Forever." They take a deep breath as a fist, 1 meter wide and wrapped in a red boxing glove, materializes from drawn lines in the air. It comes down, smashing the structure beneath it as Box leaps backward to come down hard on the ground. Sawyer retracts to his original shape, staggering backward before striking at Box in a feint. Box moves, but he changes direction. Sawyer lunges forward and grabs Box with both hands around the leg. They scream and gesture wildly with one hand as an overlarge white glove materializes behind them, matching their movements. Sawyer is slapped off and away, skidding I've lived with that too. I've been stuck with that for 6 friggin' years now at this point. Not understanding, not knowing what to do with myself, and it hurts. And I know I'm not the one who was filled full of fire and rage and ideas that make people shiver, but I'm older now. I'm growing up. I'm forced to. I'm stuck in a room with my thoughts, and I don't know what to do with them. I'm sorry, but I don't know what else I can do. Sawyer vomits on the ground, standing still for 13 seconds. He looks up and begins to walk slowly forward as the pool spreads. Listen, please. Red hands punch up out of the pool of vomit which has now surrounded Box. They grope around blindly, long fingers finding purchase on their untied shoes. Do you even remember? Do you remember that morning? You wanted a show. You didn't even know the name, and you cut me, and you... An oversized sword materializes from black lines in Box's hand. They swipe it, dismembering some of the hands before throwing it into the pool. Do you even remember? Because I do. I sure as hell do. Box steps forward. Talk to me. A winding hose appears, letting out a concentrated stream of water, washing the vomit away before hitting Sawyer in the chest. Box holds their hands to their stomach, gasping with exertion. Blue tears run down their face. Box winces, and the camera's field of view fuzzes momentarily. Anything? We also watched SpongeBob was on, and you were doing your work, and I was on the couch and in the house with you. Do you remember? When I could still leave the room, and I'd feel the sun through the windows, and you'd leave me in the light when you drove, and the sound of the car made me want to puke when you drove in. I tried to talk with you, and you didn't want to hear it, but I tried. Sawyer looks forward, unblinking. I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry I exploded, but inside me was this whirling feeling all boxed up inside that tiny painted basement, and it was building up, so you reached in and... Box falls to their knees. And... you got it. You reached inside and got what you were looking for. It all came out all sharp and hurting, and your eyes went first, and then your nose and ears, and bits were coming out of your mouth. It caught your brain, and all that's left was... Box falls silent. Sawyer stands in place, hunched over, not moving. What are you? Sawyer's breathing becomes audible and picks up in volume until it overwhelms the camera's audio. It crouches, pauses, and beats its arms into the ground, repeating with heavier and heavier blows until an arm breaks in two. The other arm quickly follows, leaving 2 splintered spikes of bone protruding from each elbow. Sawyer picks itself off the floor, appearing dazed, before snapping his neck back and charging Box from across the field of stone. A crude wooden figure with a tennis ball for a head and red yarn hair appears Asphalt face and continues to run. A wooden dog that appeared with the first figure chases him until he runs into a large-eyed pink and blue snail. He pries it off the ground and finds his arm bone caked with slime, allowing Box to ride past on a felt ox with car blinkers for eyes. Box points at Sawyer, shouting something unintelligible. Sawyer sweeps at Box, pointed arm bone tearing at their stomach before being caught across the neck by a length of blue string, bent into the shape of a human face. Box clutches their stomach, pained, and points to the sky, from which a wide, gritting, poorly drawn rectangle falls, crushing Sawyer's lower and back legs. "You're not really him, are you?" Box winces. Their shirt, now more visible in this lighting, is stained with purple and red. "When it happened, he was all hollowed out. Nothing at all was left behind. So, what are you?" Box gestures beside themselves, and a bronze cartoon desk lamp appears with eyes on the lampshade and the light bulb's aperture for a nose. The desk lamp swivels to point at Box, who nods silently before turning to shine on Sawyer. "Based on how you treated that man over there, my friend over there, I guess I think I know. Brighter, lampy." Sawyer's body begins to let off steam. "You are this place, aren't you? The Foundation holding cell. The white brick room." The sky flashes gray. "That morning, I was cornered. I think part of me still is." Sawyer's body begins to sag, craters and depressions forming in his skin. His mouth and eyes distort in shape. "Thank you, newcomer, even if it was on accident, for letting me in. Thank you, shape of Jacob Sawyer, for staying put here till I could come." The entity referred to as Sawyer flattens out, sagging as if nothing's supporting it from within. The eyes and mouth flare, letting out something of gaseous composition. Its color is unknown. Camera artifacts cluster where it is, obscuring it from view. It escapes, filling the feed with artifacts as it rises in a spiral fashion into the sky. The wrinkled, empty skin of Jacob Sawyer lays in place on the ground. The camera pivots downward and then shakes as D9926, watching from nearby, removes it from his headset. D9926 sighs heavily. He points at the grinning rectangular drawing. "That killed it, huh?" "Something like that, maybe." "So it's you? The kid in the box? You come and save me?" "Don't think I saved anything, really. I kinda maybe lost something, though. I can't believe I'm saying this, but kid, me too." D9926 hesitates, kicking his boot in the dirt. The camera swings. "Why me? Why'd you go to all that trouble to save me? You came from somewhere and were all stuck. And you got to a place where you could just start walking. And you did. What's your name, by the way? Stuart. Stuart Lowe. I'm Box. I like your name. Want a new one? Thanks. What? I think I want to rest for a while. But we need to get out of this place. You like walking, right? What? Or running, flying? You like seeing things without people telling you what to see? I don't know what I want to do. Besides, you can come with me if you want. You don't want to go back to where you were before. I did say I wanted to find people, didn't I? That's what I meant, Mr. Stewart. There's people here, just not in this direction. You can talk with them, play with them. You don't have to be you anymore. Now, doesn't that sound like something? Box points to a patch of dark sky in the distance. Probably somewhere in that direction. I need to get out of here too. Put that camera down. I don't think we need it. The camera is placed on the ground. D9926 and Box are seen in the center right of frame. I can still send you back if you want. Sure you want to go? D9926 nods. Then follow me and tell me about your time living in the Foundation and carry me on all the uphill parts. D9926 says something inaudible and Box laughs. The pair begin to walk out of frame, occasionally stumbling and adjusting direction. Their voices are drowned out as a breeze begins to flow, lifting strands of Box's hair. The feed flickers and cuts out. 6 hours after the initiation of notable rerun event number 6, the cameras in SCP-6080's containment chamber briefly failed. When all cameras come back online, SCP-6080 is absent from the chamber, which contains instead a yellow sticky note and a single DVD. The video contained on the disc is slightly digitally corrupted, of low visual quality, and appears to be made using Windows Movie Maker. An amendment to Containment Procedures and Object Class following this disappearance is currently in progress. The contents of the disc are written below. Begin video log. White text fades in on a default blue background, reading a message to the Foundation. Somebody, presumably Box, is heard opening their mouth. Silence for several seconds. I hope you're proud of me. I've done well, I think, given all of that. I like to think so, at least. Something is audible, scraping against soft sand or soil. But, yeah, Foundation, I'm glad you at least, tried. Better than I could say for Jacob, at least. I was a Euclid, whatever that meant. Hopefully something nice. But it was 4 years, wasn't it? A sound of affirmation is made in another voice. And he says, I'm at my most dynamic part of life. I do. So things change, I guess. I change. The scene outside changes to a view of an alien vista outside a window. Coral-like flora sway in the wind through a dense yellow fog. You were scared of me. I got used to that, and I kind of understand. What I didn't get was that I think he was scared of me too. Even before I did that. Maybe he was right too. I think he was scared of himself, not of you. It's different. When you like cartoons, I don't know if like is the right word. When you collect them, it's scary to know where they come from. You? No. Yeah, I don't know. They come from boxes. Hundreds of them. And they just keep coming because people need them. And he'd rather have thought they were made for him all along. Yeah, I guess. I was a kid. You're still, I know. So when you guys picked me up, I would have gone anywhere. With anyone. And I think you knew that. There is a pause and the sound of wind. So, you made a box for me. It was a nice one. Had a nice TV, but you guys were uncomfortable. Uncomfortable, yeah. Sorry, Rowan. One of your guys used me to escape. He's okay, by the way. A cell-shaded chameleon-like creature in a torn D-class uniform is depicted hanging by his tail in front of a vibrant rainforest background, waving one claw at the viewer and smiling. But you were all stuck in your own little boxes, I think. So I had to silence. I had to go. The scene changes to that of a playground at night. Box sits in the form of a young bandaged human on a chair in the middle distance. The camera is being held by an unseen person, and the frame periodically moves as this person shifts their grip. So now we're here. The Nemo. Somewhere on the Mnemosine expanse, on the way home. Thanks. So, Foundation, I know you want to look for me. Don't bother. I'm safe and in trusted hands. I'm growing out of my body in a few years anyway. Then I won't be a kid anymore. But you are now. Let's enjoy that. A playground is seen on the screen. A playground in the Mnemosine. I didn't have that. No, you didn't. So, I can't grow up just yet. A part of me will never grow up, I think, after what happened. Growing up, yeah, I should know. You've done a lot of that back there. I think more than anyone your age should. It isn't fair. There is a prolonged silence. They sigh and pick up a stick, drawing shapes in the sand. But I'm glad I found that place. It's still there, too. I don't know if it'll ever really go away. There is a sound of acknowledgement. But I found it. Before now, it was just there, hiding. Box gets up and walks around the playground. The camera moves to track them. Can I still be a kid if I have that inside me? You can. And can I grow up if I wasn't much of a kid? I can make sure of it. So, can I stick here for a bit and play a little on the swings? Yeah, of course. this. Box jumps up onto one of the swings and kicks off the ground to begin moving. Box beckons. So, come on then. There's so much we need to catch up on. End of recording. The sticky note found alongside the disk contained the following writing. I hope you understand. And that about does it for this extra long SCP reading. I do hope you enjoyed it. And I'd like to thank you for watching, especially if you've watched the whole thing. And I'll see you next time.